heading out to Natick, Mass to have a conversation with this gentleman that owns a school out there for my YouTube channel, Martial Insight and Advice video series. We should have a good time out there. My first time meeting him, his name is Paul. Come along for the ride. This should be good. See you when I get there, guys. What's up, everyone? It's been a while since I produced content for my video series, Martial Insight and Advice, but here I am, back again. I just rode my scoot from Springfield, Mass, home base, to Natick, Mass. I come out here to check out this dojo, Metrowest Academy, where they teach Japanese Jiu Jitsu. I'm impressed because Rory Miller, a man who retired from the Midwest prison system, selected this gentleman to help him run his organization, which speaks a lot about his confidence in what this gentleman does. So I want to learn more about it, and hopefully you do too. He's going to meet me here, open up the academy. Like I said, we're going to sit down, we're going to do an interview. Look forward to more content coming from me on the Underground Alliance page. And let's get it. Haskins, back, Martial Insight and Advice video series. It's been a while since I produced any content for it because it's hard to find quality individuals to interview. I searched long and hard. I've been following this gentleman for a little bit now. He works with a gentleman that I follow from my correctional days, Rory Miller, and I don't want to do disservice and try to pronounce your last name.
Just make it as Italian as you can, and you get DiRienzo.
There we go. See that?
Yep.
So Paul works with Rory Miller and teaches pragmatic martial arts as well as defensive tactics to law enforcement. Very important. And as you know, I'm the type who's very critical about civilians teaching law enforcement, and it impressed me that a gentleman like Rory Miller, with his experience running prisons in the Midwest, TAC teams and things like that, trusts a civilian to help him run his company and teach. So that speaks a lot about this gentleman's acumen when it comes to his martial information.
I feel like you're overstating it a bit, but okay.
Well, speaking the truth, that's what we do here. So we're going to interview him like we have everybody else and get to the bottom of things. All right. So, you want to introduce yourself to the...
My name is Paul DiRienzo. I own the Metrowest Academy of Jiu Jitsu here in Natick. I thank you very much for this. This is an honor. I don't get asked to do this very much, so it's kind of cool. Usually I don't want to doing the question asking for the Chiron group. It's a Japanese style Jiu Jitsu, so you're very familiar with that, obviously, with sort of a hybridized model. And then the Chiron stuff, I've known Rory for coming up on 10 years, and I tend to do, we make a joke about the Spider-Man movie, the guy in the chair.
Yeah.
I'm the guy in the chair for a lot of stuff. Like Rory's not going to be the one running the technical stuff, and he'll be the first one to tell you like anything you see online is because Paul pushed that really hard. So, and then I try not to screw up the technical information after that. So,
me being an elder gentleman as well, I understand the
technical. Hardly. I did not believe your age when you told me.
Rory is from the old school. He's probably still using paper and pencils.
He's really close to your age. The fact that you're doing this, you guys are like 2 years apart. The fact that you're doing this, and by the way, my beard has more gray than yours. Let's be honest, guys. Who looks older?
Well, thank you for doing this interview, and we look forward to hearing a lot more from you and hopefully training with you as well.
Yeah, it's fun. We try to make it enjoyable.
So first, let me ask you, how did you get in contact with Rory Miller? How'd that come about?
I joke that there's a lot of school owners who had the exact same experience of, I've been training. We're not very traditional, especially not our adult program. Like, we wear gi because, well, frankly, I like my t-shirt, and the t-shirt won't survive, right? And they didn't have rash guards back in the day. Those are fairly, I tell the kids, like, these are new, guys. This is new technology. And my mother-in-law was looking for a gift and bought me a book. And that book was called Meditations on Violence. And sorry kids, I'm gonna curse a little bit. I read the book and I went, oh shit, I'm doing everything wrong. I'm not doing everything wrong, but you read that book, if you're like any type of traditional anything, you read that book and you're like, oh God, I'm applying so many things. Like the backbone is correct, but the application is so far off and it's missing the mark. And you know, I'm a guy, my instructor always taught me, like, go and find good information and bring it back, and that's an important, be additive to the art, right? Be additive to the training. And I have a friend in Rhode Island called Rafi. I should hook you up with Rafi for your next interview. He's fantastic. He's actually been doing videos for Black Belt Magazine on Kali.
Okay.
Yeah, really cool. Great guy, walking encyclopedia. And I was at a seminar at Rafi's, and I said, you know, Rafi, do you know this guy, Rory Miller? Have you ever heard of this guy? He goes, oh, yeah, I know Rory. He goes, Paul, actually, the way you like to train, you should immediately bring Rory in. You'll love him. And I don't bring people in to my students without having vetted them. But Rafi's, trusts me, knows the way we like to train. And I was like, all right. I reached out to Rory and I brought him in for a seminar, and I was like, this is freaking awesome. It's a very different lens to what we do. And I can only ever be me, right? I can never be, I don't ever try to tell my students in law enforcement how to do their job or how to apply, because I have never had to, thank God, had to do that role. I never tell my teenage female students how to do their thing, because I have never been, I know it's 2021, but I've never been a teenage female anything. So trust with their background. And with Rory, it was, and all the principles that he's brought to bear, it was a very different application than I'd ever heard before. And I was like, I went through a long period of trying to figure out how do I incorporate it into what we do. Because I love Jiu Jitsu, I didn't want to lose that. But how do I make it more relevant? How do I make it more pragmatic, and not just traditional for samurai purposes? Because I'm definitely not one of those. So, big gotcha.
Well, let's go back. What was it that motivated you to begin your martial education?
I was a really badly bullied kid. I was small and scrawny and awkward and socially inept and really unbelievably introverted. Figured. And I got to high school and a friend talked me into wrestling. And at that point, I had grown a foot in a year and I was tripping on carpet. And wrestling I was not good, Randy. I was not good. Tall, skinny beanpole in a room full of athletes. I was so far out of my depth. But man, I had fun. I was never so sore in my entire life. I've never sweated so much in my entire life. That room smelled so bad, but I had so much fun. And that led me to want more. I got to college and I was at UMass Amherst at the beginning, and they had it's a big university, they had gym class throwaways, like 1 credit, to get the
PEAC courses.
Yeah, get the college kids off their ass. Is pretty much what I called them, right? And there were 5 different martial arts. I was like, I've always wanted to do a martial art. My mom wouldn't let my brother and I when we were kids, because we'd watch wrestling and beat the snot out of each other. She was like, I didn't want to make you more violent. I was like, ironically enough, it would have given us something to do. But either way, see, Mom. I went through all the martial arts and I was like, I don't know what that is. Jiu Jitsu. And I saw the word grappling. Well, I really enjoyed wrestling. I'm not good enough to be a college wrestler. Grappling, all right. Oh, how do I know that in Jiu-Jitsu? that tall, skinny guy just beat the crap out of everybody in UFC. I want to do that. I'm a tall, skinny guy. I want to do that too. And it was not what I thought it was, because BJJ, Japanese Jiu-Jitsu. I was in, like, I went to my instructor, I went to class on a Tuesday, I went back on a Thursday. On Friday, I was like, so can I sign up for this? He goes, technically it's full, so you won't get the credit. I was like, I don't care about the credit, can I do the class? And then so it's so long ago, it doesn't matter. A week later, I found out that there was a grappling session for brown belts and above. And I was like, can I come watch? And they're like, okay. So they let me sit there and watch. They're like, do you want to play? I was like, okay. They're like, any experience? I was like, well, I wrestled. They're like, you wrestled? Get over here. And they were just happy to have a big guy who wasn't afraid to roll around and play.
Yep.
And the same thing with the instructor at UMass had a Kali class. And I was like, can I come watch? And I went back to second class, I went back to third class, and the fourth class he like handed me a stick. He goes, get over here. I was like, yes. So just keep showing up. That's the biggest lesson.
Absolutely. So who'd you train under?
His name at UMass Amherst was Rob Cohn. I only actually trained under him for 3 months, because then I transferred to Boston College, and I got very lucky. The instructor at UMass, the instructor at BC, they were from the same original school in Long Island, the American Jiu-Jitsu Federation of Long Island. And the guy at BC, I knew I was transferring. UMass was a very long trip to try and go to, so that was not feasible. So I went and watched one of the black belt tests, and I was blown away. My instructor, he's still my instructor today, to this point in time. He's in Watertown now. He's only 5 years old, 7, 8 years older than me, but he's been training since he was 12 in Long Island. And his name is Nick Theodoro. If you're in Boston, Boston Self-Defense, he's in Watertown, go, it's worth it. And the joke was I was in, for a long time, my instructor missed more classes than I did. So, yeah, just a training hound.
I understand.
I'm sure you get it.
From 6 years old till now, and I'm gonna die doing this.
Yep.
I've never stopped training.
When you stop doing training, when they put the last shovel on and you can't kick your way out,
exactly.
Then you stop training.
Exactly. So how do you stay motivated to continue your martial journey?
So one of my many backgrounds is fitness. I got out of college, didn't know what I wanted to do, got pushed into working in a financial world. I don't belong in an office. I made it 4 years, which is a bloody miracle now as I look back. I don't know how the hell I did that. I learned a lot, which was useful. But I got out of there and I realized, what do I want to do with my life? I really love this. Like, more than anything else, this was like the thing I got. When I woke up at 5 a.m., I was waiting for class at 7 p.m. And I was like, I got to figure out a way to make this happen. I did not feel I was a black belt, but I definitely did not feel ready at that point. My instructor kind of sets our version of second degree black belt as like, if you're gonna run a school, this should be the minimum barrier to entry. Other people do other things, that's totally fine. Just ours, right? That's about 8 to 10 years of training. I wasn't there yet, so I was like, well, if I go learn fitness, I'm gonna have a hard couple of years paying bills, but it's gonna lend itself to this really well. So I became a trainer, and I learned something. Motivation is bullshit. It waxes, it wanes, it comes, it goes. You wake up on a Monday morning, you are motivated. And Tuesday morning, you're like, snooze alarm. So it's discipline. And I don't use discipline as like, oh, you're in trouble. To me, I use the word discipline as interchangeable with habits. You don't think about brushing your teeth anymore. You've been doing it for a few years, right? And if you make things habitual, and habitually, there's a whole process. I'm working on my master's in psychology. The habitualization is so powerful. You can go through a lot of things automatically that you don't like, that are just, these are things of life you have to do.
Yep.
And so for me, it's just that straight up discipline thing. The COVID really threw me off because I'm not very much a creature of habit. And I went from, 20,000 steps a day to 2.
Yeah.
It was like that.
Yeah, that was challenging.
Yeah.
It was highly challenging for a lot of people.
I learned how to smoke meat really well, so I'll have you out to barbecue someday.
Nice.
But
Nice.
I don't do well with free time.
My free time is
Well, you get to do this stuff, which is
I do this. I go through YouTube and just view videos, training videos, or this or that. I read a lot. I write a lot. I train all day, every day, except for Sundays. This is all I do.
Not to interrupt the interview format, but I have a question for you. Should I wait for later or do it now?
No.
So, your lens, you go through YouTube and you're looking for stuff. How do you evaluate? How do you pick? How do you choose?
Well, first off, everything I do is pragmatic in nature. Goshin Jitsu is my focus, self-protection arts.
Is that what Goshin translates into?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, my Japanese is terrible.
So the thing is, with me, the major issue I have with the martial sciences or people's expression of the martial sciences is the martial. First of all, let's establish this. So there's systems within the martial arts. Martial arts being the generic term.
Yes.
Because a lot of things that people train in are not martial arts. They're people arts.
Yep.
Karate is not a martial art. It's a people art. Japanese Jiu Jitsu is a martial art.
Well, that was its origin, right? It was very martial in nature.
Brazilian Jiu Jitsu is not a martial art.
Not anymore.
Although it came from,
Yeah.
so we understand that dynamic. So let's talk about systems. So Judo is a system of doing something. If the
Yes.
goal is, say, to be able to protect yourself, Judo is a system towards that goal. Right?
Yeah, it's an element, right? Takedown, throwing, yeah.
Yep. Karate is a system or a way of achieving that as well. Say Aikido is a system towards that achievement as well. You understand?
Yes.
So those are different systems. Now, those three different systems, there's different methods and or styles of those respective systems, right? So you got different types of judo, right? And people name their types of judo, whatever they're gonna name.
Yep.
You have different types of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu being a style of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Then you have different styles of karate, Matsubayashi Shorin-ryu, Shotokan, Uechi-ryu, whatever, right? Okay. The issue is, there's the issue to me is our industry is the only industry where two people can study a martial art
Yep.
and not end up with the same information. What I mean by that is this.
Yes.
If I studied to become an electrician in Guam, and you studied in native Mass, and then we both moved to Springfield, right?
A lot of translation.
And we went to a certifying entity in order to become certified electricians in Springfield, Mass, or in Massachusetts, or wherever, right? They don't care that I studied in Guam and what curriculum they taught me in Guam. They don't care that you studied in Natick, Mass. All that matters is we can pass the test with the same general information to become certified. Within the martial landscape, that doesn't happen. And in my estimation, there's 15 basic lessons that every martial artist should come to understand as a direct result of their curriculum, whatever. That's just universal information. It doesn't matter what was used within that curriculum to show you that information, because all that is an example chosen or selected or designed by that respective instructor or writer of the curriculum to teach that basic general information.
Yes. Yep.
And that's not what happens. So you get people like Shotokan people who kick like this, and people that there's no such thing as, well, we do it like this, because one of the basic lessons is form over function versus function over form. So what that means is this. In the beginning, when somebody comes in and doesn't know, I have to give them a structure or form of something.
Yes.
And then they realize or learn the function of that form. And then when they get well versed in the function of that form, they dropped the form, and now it's function over form. So I might be on a hilltop, and this form is not going to look like it was when I was on a flat dojo floor, but the function ends up being the same. And we got 10 different people executing 10 different ways, but the function remains the same.
Yes.
Produces the same result. So the form really doesn't matter. It's that they understand the mechanics and all these things. And that's what I try to get people to understand about martial arts. It's more streamlined than you think. It's not so individualized as people present it. And that will bring martial arts into the real world, you know, and make it more functional. For example, another example, I belong to this group. It's called the Open Sparring Group. You get every 2 months, you get a text message and or email telling you the location and the time. So it's always at 1 o'clock. It's a fight club.
Okay, go ahead. So it's fight club.
So we walk into a room, we don't know who's there. Any dojo from anywhere, and people come from all over. And we just converge and walk up and say, hey, how you doing, man? Would you like to fight? And you go, yeah, I'd love to fight. And then we wait around, everybody gets their partner, and they go, and we just start fighting, right?
Yep.
And when we're done, say, oh, thank you, that was good, and walk away and go. For 2 hours we do that. I've been a member for like whatever, maybe 3-4 years now. But I had this Aikido guy. I could tell he was trying a bunch of Aikido stuff, and I have my background is I have a black belt in Aikido Karate, black belt in what we just refer to as Karate-Jutsu, black belt in Judo, black belt in Aikido-Jutsu, Kurokai Aikido-Jutsu.
Huge amount of crossover.
And purple belt in 10th Planet Jiu Jitsu.
Okay.
So I said, I see you have an Aikido background. I can tell from what you're trying to do. He's like, yeah. I said, I'm going to teach you how to use your Aikido properly. And he was like, all right. So then we just started fighting, and everything I did to him is found in every other art. But I just focused on, Aikido expression of it, and showed him how to use it. And everything I did to him was an Aikido technique.
Yeah, you're talking with Rory, there's another guy, Casey Kagaisen, who is an officer in Minnesota. Casey runs the Violence Dynamics group. On Facebook, they come around for seminars. He's a SWAT guy, but he's also 30 years of Judo, Jiu Jitsu, Aikido. And we've had the same conversation many times in many forms. Taking out for a second our brethren in the martial arts that are stylistically there like Tai Chi, right? They're never putting hands on another human. If you're putting your hands on another human, I don't care what your family called it or your style group called it. It's probably all the same stuff.
All the same.
Right? Karate-Jutsu is going to call it something, Aikido is going to call it something, Aikido-Jitsu is going to call it something a little bit different. Okay, what's this?
Nekajo.
Okay. Or a C-lock, or a center lock, or a Z-lock, or a Nikaido. We call it a Nidan because second. And it's all the same bloody thing. It all hurts. That's what it comes down to.
Yep.
And that's the more I do this, the deeper it goes. The more I lose the names of
names themselves. If we go back, Anko Itosu Sensei, Gitchin Funakoshi, one of his instructors, is a man. He's the man that introduced karate to the school systems on Okinawa, and he taught the teachers of the school, who in turn went and taught their students. So back before that, he introduced it. But back before he introduced it, 16th century, it was one or two people with an instructor in a closed off room.
Yes. Very hidden, very locked down.
And he would be like, do this. And they practice whatever they're practicing, whatever, right? When he introduced it to the school systems, he couldn't walk around a schoolyard of 75 teachers or 50 teachers or something and go, do this, do this, do this. He had to come up with name or word association with movement. So what he did was he called this Jodan Uke, or let's just say, right? So Jodan Uke. It wasn't, the title wasn't indicative of the action. It simply was an identifier.
Sure.
So when he says through the bullhorn, Jodan Uke, everybody knew the motion. Now all he had to do was count.
Yeah.
And they would practice that motion instead of going around saying, do this,
Well,
do this.
Kano and the belt system, right? Why did the belt system develop? Because Kano had to go from school to school and be like, oh, you're a blah blah. I know what you're on, what you've done, and what you're working on, and what you can take, and what you can handle. And it's just a way to organize information.
Exactly. That's all it was. So that's the way I use it in my dojo as well. Terminology it's easier for me to teach, and Eddie Bravo does the same thing. Within 10th Planet, we have our own language. So when you're talking on the phone or in competition, let's say we're doing a competition, I could stand off to the side. My instructor, his name is Pat Campagnola, he could stand off to the side and say lockdown, or say, twister side, or whatever. It's a language nobody else knows. And if we're in every transition and every position is named, it makes it easier to teach and coach.
Sure. It's like if you read about the Patriots, they have their very specific offensive playbook. It has their plays, their calls, their language. Their, Brady's used to have that. Used to be Brady. Sad. Used to have that whole look like a computer manual on his forearm because of all the play. Yeah, it's just a language thing.
Yeah. Exactly. So to answer your question, that's what that's the lens I'm looking through. Everything I do is through a pragmatic lens. So if somebody does it for sporting, I'm not speaking to those people, because what people need to understand is, and I try to express this in many of the videos that I do, is when it comes to the martial sciences, or if we put it in terms of a deadly weapon, a firearm is a deadly weapon. The principles that govern that deadly weapon's use for target shooting are not the same that govern its use for self-protection. It doesn't make those principles any less valid. It's context. So respiratory pause is a valid technique and or principle to use with a firearm when you're targeting. But respiratory pause does not apply to self-protection, a gunfight that happens within 4 feet of each other.
This is one of my sim scars. When the son of a bitch is shooting back,
Exactly.
pause. What are you, out of your mind? Move.
So, and what I tell you, it's a valid technique, valid principle, but doesn't apply to self-protection.
No.
And if we replace that term firearm or tool firearm with the tool of karate or jiu-jitsu or whatever, the principles that govern its use for sport do not govern its use for self-protection. And all those people who say, well, mixed martial arts, or that whole dynamic, that whole world, that applies. Talk to Anthony Smith.
Yeah. Well, so about a week ago, I think you were watching the Facebook. We talked about martial arts, self-defense, the Venn diagram, what's in the middle, and it's an ongoing conversation. There is stuff in the middle. I just watched a video of a guy doing a self-defense technique, one of our BJJ friends, and it was a form choke, and it was a sacrifice down to the ground. And I'm like, that's gonna hurt like a son of a bitch when you do it in the parking lot. Yeah. And I get the concept, I get the principle. You're only thinking here. And if you, I have a lot of students who have prior backgrounds. Grappling is one of them. I take my students to the parking lot, and we have a daycare next door, and they have a playground. The playground has wood chips. Guess who wants to grapple on wood chips? Fucking no one. No one. Yeah. And every single time, my students who have like heavy, extensive grappling background, they're like, "Oh, this sucks. Can we go back inside?" I'm like, "No. The lesson is know how to control the ground, and know how to get your ass off the ground. If you're not working both principles, you're missing something. One of your goals is akimbo." And I wrestle. I love the grappling arts. I love the grappling sports. I don't do much of it anymore in terms of sport application because, so funny story, I was training at a Brazilian Jiu Jitsu school as well as my instructor's Japanese Jiu Jitsu school. And the contexts are very different between the two. And we were at the BJJ school. We were doing a lot of spider guard for 3, 4, 8 weeks, whatever it was. I forget what it was. And my instructor's doing take down, ground and pound, fight your way back up off the ground. And my friend, who's a gorilla, was driving me without even realizing it. Spider guard. And he goes, "What are you, blank stupid?" And punched me in the groin. I was like, "Oh, bad habit kicked in. Damn it!" Context. My brain, the habit kicked in before the context did, and that's a little rough. That's a little dangerous. So
Extremely.
doesn't mean don't enjoy the grappling.
Yeah.
But
just be able to I can't even say it right now.
Compartmentalize. Yeah, absolutely.
What's what, and I teach that. So when I teach for my instructor at 10th Planet Agawam, or 10th Planet Springfield, located in Agawam, Mass. And when I teach guys, I tell them, listen, if you are using this for competition, do this.
Yes.
If you're using it for the street, do this. But it's the same tool, it's just altered a slight bit for it. That's what I do.
Well, when we do Newaza weeks, right? We do a Judo month, right? Randori is really useful. Like the push-pull, the pressure, dealing with the pressure of somebody trying to drop you. Rory has a drill that he calls it French Randori. He found it in a book somewhere, so the name's probably a little offensive to somebody because it's I lose then you lose. That's why it's French Randori. Listen, it's an old book. It was. He said the book was written by the English, so take from there as you will. It's really a funny name, but either way, it's a great drill. It helps eliminate some of the young buck competitive stuff, which is nice. And then it's useful. It's not self-defense. And I will remind my students that, like, guys, this is getting okay with dealing with the pressure. This is getting okay in dealing with the mechanics of the off balancing or the, whatever it is. But don't confuse this for a street fight. It's not the same thing. Not even close.
Those are terms I'm not really into using. I don't like the term fight, and I'm not big on rolling. And within my Jiu-Jitsu school, my 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu school, my instructor, I'm not big on rolling. I'm big on drilling.
Got it.
And it's a different dynamic in the respect of, like, there's a basic rule when it comes to using your art for pragmatic purposes. There's a basic rule that you need to understand. I call it the basic universal principle of technique interpretation and pragmatic usage. And it says this: the first action you execute, or combination of action, should have the ability and or probability of neutralizing the opponent's ability to continue to fight, or immobilize the opponent entirely. If your action doesn't satisfy that rule, then it's a non-functional action and or drill.
Got it.
Non-functional is any movement that doesn't satisfy that rule. Functional movement is any movement that satisfies that rule.
It's like a weaponized counter-assault.
So, for example, somebody's in side control on me, right? On the ground, trying to settle me down so they can create distance to punch me in the face. So I'll just hold them onto me. As I'm holding them, instead of putting the frames in for competition, I'm holding them onto me.
Context.
They have to create space to hit me. In the process of them trying to create space, they're not going to be hitting me. They're just trying to create that space. I can explode out into something. So it's like that. And this right here is not a martial move. It's just satisfying that rule.
Yes.
So now I'm just sitting here just like this. It takes no strength for me because naturally we're stronger towards our core.
Yeah, pulling in.
They're trying to push away. Naturally they're weaker. So I'm just sitting there just like this. All of a sudden I explode. Boom! I get my feet in between us. I kick off. Technical stand up.
Great distance. Yep.
There's so many things, and it's all about satisfying that rule. Another one, we had a problem in the prison. This young lady, and last name Albano. She ran into a code, and inmate pummeled her. Ran right in, grabbed him, and just stopped and was yelling at him, and he punched her in the face and just went in on her.
Yep.
Retired with nerve damage. She stutters now. She's just bad. I ran into her like a year later or something in the mall, and totally different woman.
TBI.
It's bad, right?
Yep.
So I go to my administration, and I'm like, listen, some things need to be done within the defensive tactics. That I ain't gotten into a position or elevating to a position where I could make changes at that point.
More weighty opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
To some.
To some. Yeah, exactly.
So I said, let's process this whole thing, right? All right. So they asked me, well, what would you have done? How would you train somebody to deal with that? Glad you asked. So basic rule I gave you,
yep.
Right? Okay. I want you to imagine this. So two inmates are sitting there fighting or squaring off. You run into the code, run in, and I said, this thing would have changed everything for her. If she would have ran in and not grabbed his arm and stopped, if she would have just ran in, boom, and hit him and kept running, where he's tripping, he would have had to address the balance issue and would not have been able to hit her.
Reset the loop. Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
So, it's not a martial technique that somebody has to spend years to learn. Anybody can run. All you got to do is run, bump them with your chest, and keep running.
Have you ever met or heard Jeff Berger?
No.
So he's in Salem, Mass. We're gonna set him right up with a whole bunch of good interviews after this. Jeff is the guy who grew up. He'll tell you this. He grew up as a thug in Boston area, and wanted to learn Kung Fu, so he learned some Chinese and went to China. Then he wanted to learn Muay Thai, so he went to Thailand. Like, he's that guy. And again, another walking encyclopedia. Just had his second hip surgery, so be careful, kids. Jeff has a great quote about there's not enough football in martial arts. But just simple things like that. Simple application of force, direct through. And he sometimes he jokes. He goes, "It's nice to see martial arts in football when you see like spin moves or people moving, rotating, hip angles played through." But yeah, not enough football in martial arts sometimes. Just a good shoulder pop.
If you apply that rule, or I should say, satisfy that rule with your action, or look at your action through that lens, your action changes forever.
Yeah. Series of games that Rory plays with called Plastic Mind. This is a permission level thing. Instead of how hard is it to hurt another human being? How many people have a hard time giving themselves permission to hurt another human being? If you've ever taught any type of seminar format in any way, shape, or form, and you have a mom in that class, and it's okay, here's how to put pressure on the eyeball. Ew, I can never do that. Okay, somebody's dragging your kid off the playground. I'll rip his blah blah off, right? And feed it to him, or something like that, depending on what they're different. So Plastic Mind is a variation of a game where you don't have to be you. There's absolutely nothing that says you have to be you in a fight, a situation. If you teach leadership, at some point you've probably heard the term fake it till you make it, right? Pretend you're, I don't know, Tony Robbins, Obama, like a great orator, and for a little while, play the role, and eventually your brain kind of catches up. One of the things is, in case you guys play it, I don't want to give everything away because it's kind of fun, but one of the things is your mindset is this person is a ball of just yarn and you are a cat, and go have fun with your toy. Or this person just murdered your whole family and you walked in on it, go play. And you get to change your mindset based upon the outset. And there's a variation of a game called One Step that he plays Randori style. Huge amount of fun. I have found it personally very instructive. I view myself through the lens of a good guy. I'm a nice guy, and I'm kind of on the larger side, so I've always been a little bit delicate with people because I'm super afraid of hurting people. Background in physiology, I know the damage we're doing, which is sometimes a challenge. I've I've had personal physical therapists come in here and they're like, I can't do this anymore. Like literally, she was like, I can't, you know, joint locks, I can't. I know the damage it's doing. I'm like, I know. There's a higher purpose though. Back to that rule, right? There's the reason we're going to carefully do this as much as we can. Everything has wear and tear. And I found that it has helped not only me, but a lot of students find other mindsets. And, you know, law enforcement. One of the biggest challenges is ex-military and law enforcement. Why? Two very different jobs. A lot of crossover skills. Two very different jobs, two very different goals. And you can't go into law enforcement with a military mindset in terms of final goal, because the military's job is to end the bad guy. And it's not law enforcement's job to end the bad guy, it's to keep everybody safe.
Yep.
For all the quotations out here. And that can be a massive challenge in terms of the gear shift. So, sorry to ramble.
No.
And I know we're a little off the interview format, but let's be honest, this is more interesting, right?
And this is the thing about this show is more, in the beginning when I started filming them, I would say interview with, and then I started saying conversation.
It's way more interesting, isn't it? And it's more fun, let's be honest, right? I want to know some more stuff about you. Like I was watching some of the videos and I'm like, I have questions.
Yeah. So getting back to the questions, and we're going to deviate again, of course. You know,
definitely.
You know how we do. How has your martial journey affected and/or enhanced your life?
If I could go find, I don't know where it is, a picture of my wedding party, 2 of them weren't black belts, right? Like that's, of the 9 dudes that are there, 1 is my brother, who's not a black belt, and 1 is my friend that I grew up with, who's not a black belt. And everybody else, including my sensei, most of my best friends, all black belts in there, right? And I always think that that's probably the easiest way to denote it, because that's a pretty big sample size in a particularly large event in your life. Now, I'm here 100 hours a week. That means this community is my community. I don't see myself as in charge of the community. I really don't like that moniker, and I don't love people who are like, I'm the sensei, you shall bow. I hate that bullshit. I've met them. I try not to choke them out. But they exist. You've met them too, right?
Yes, that's the whole premise behind Master Ken.
Oh yes, I love Master Ken.
he because of experiences he's had.
Yes.
He created that character.
Great character.
And he acts like the people he's met.
It's not even a caricature sometimes.
Yeah.
It's really not. It's really almost like on the nose.
On the nose, and that's exactly it. I asked him, once I retired, I flew out to New Mexico and did an episode with them. And we went to dinner before the episode, and I asked him, I said, so I gotta know, how'd you get into this? And that's when he told me the story, you know. He was like, yeah, you know,
I run into these guys.
Yeah, I trained my, you know.
When the cameras aren't rolling, I'll tell you some stories. I'm not gonna name names on that one, but.
It was just interesting. It was pretty funny. And he said he always wrote down his experiences, and he's a film student.
Yes.
And he was like,
Matt Page. His name is Matt Page.
Yeah.
I'm friends with him on Facebook. He's a really nice guy.
He is. And he was like, I just, you know, people kept telling me, you should put this in film. So he started doing it, you know, because that.
This can't be real. It can't be real. No, this ego exists. I've met these people. This is legit. This is the way they are.
And we discussed how I have a different way. I'm the type that martial arts is my life. It's not something I do, it's who I am.
Right.
And so I get really upset at a lot of things where he just makes fun of it. You know?
Yeah, and that, again, the lens, right? Like you take it to heart because you really truly care about the end result for the student. I'm not saying he doesn't. That's not all what I'm saying. I'm just saying if you can perspective shift, there's a lot of humor to be had there as well. There's a tremendous amount of humor to be had there as well.
He definitely finds it.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean my community here, all my social events this summer have been students' barbecues that I get invited to. Like that's kind of sort of like what I get pulled into, which is in a good way. It's some of the best parts of my life.
Is there anything you wish you had done differently in reference to your martial journey?
I mean, it's hard not to have the lamentations, right? Like my friends who are either law enforcement or bounced extensively and have all the stories, all the war stories. And I joke that like, I'm like, I don't have any of those. I don't have the majority of the stories. Rory goes, yeah, that's smart. You talked your way out of them. I've got a dozen stories of talking my friends out of confrontations or backing groups down or whatever. And Rory goes, so you're the smart one and we're the stupid ones who had to learn by getting bruised or stabbed or whatever. And I'm like, I'm not gonna, no, but there's some part of my brain that, because I thought about bouncing and it scared the crap out of me.
Worth it this day and age.
No, this day and age, videos everywhere, absolutely not.
Definitely.
Would you imagine advising somebody today to go into law enforcement?
No.
Right? It's
Springfield Police Department.
Yep.
Usually has 500 applicants.
Mm-hmm.
They got probably 60 now.
I was gonna say, how many right now? I'm hearing that from a lot of friends on the force.
Nobody wants to go in there.
There's thankless jobs, and then there's you're going to get pooped on regularly jobs.
Regularly.
And I don't mean because of the job, but the job, the lens, the culture, the society. It's
everything.
yeah. I don't blindly back any human being. I feel a lot of. I want to support people who. In self-defense, I don't have many concerns. I'm a big bald gorilla with a beard. Who the hell is gonna bug me, right? I'm not saying it can't happen. I'm just saying the chances are on the low side, right? You and I are big, strong guys. Nobody looks at us and goes, "I'm gonna rob that guy." It just doesn't happen, right? So for me, my job, and I'm sure this probably hits one of those questions, is to make other humans safer and help other people be better, awesome, terrifying people, right? Small, like one of my greatest successes here are like the female teenagers who like they're much higher on the list of potential violence, right? And for people that they know, and that's a hard permission thing to break through. If I can do anything to negate that potential, cool. My students that are on the job, they don't have a choice, right? Randy King's got a great thing, Rory does too, about this. There's really only 4 potential outcomes in a fight or a self-defense situation, right? You can escape, like run away, escape, get out of there, right? Evasion, avoid, whatever keeps you in distance from the fight. There is destruction, damage, like put enough hurt and pain and break into you that ends the altercation. There's control, which is the hardest one of all of them. Because out of everything, controlling somebody, if I can control your body, I win Olympic gold medals. Like that's how hard that is, right? And realistically, for the majority of our students, it's not a problem. Because you can leave, cops can't leave. I can probably put more damage into somebody, well not me because of who I am, but my female students can put more damage into somebody and get away with it than I ever can. The cops definitely can't do that, and certainly can't do it now, and nor should they, right? And controlling somebody is insanely hard. And the fourth possibility, we don't practice, which is losing. You have to recognize that that's a possibility. And then Rory's got something called a catastrophic win. You win, you don't go to jail, but you end up in a wheelchair or with a colostomy bag because you won, but your spleen got stabbed, right? Or something like that.
Here, one thing about technique, there's 4 phases or 4 components to a successfully executed technique or a good technique. That's the setup, the entry, the control factor, and the finish. You'll never make it to the finish if these 3.
Yep. Link chain, right?
Right? They have to be not in order, but they have to be secure in order to make it to the finish. One of the most important ones is the control factor. Now here's the thing. The setup is going to be dictated pretty much by the person that's attacking you, the aggressor, right? Ideally, because they're going, in order to hurt me, they have to come touch me.
Right.
This is what I find. My entry, there's many different ways I can do it. Now, when it comes to control and/or technique, the thing is this: the person will tell you what they want you to do to them. The situation will tell you what you need to do to them. And what I mean by that is, 1 out of every 10 people is left-handed, which means the majority of attackers are going to come right-handed. And you can tell. I'm sitting there looking at somebody. I see their right pocket's a little worn more. It's a little dirty. They got the knife clipped on their pocket.
Do you know the shoulder thing? From my kinesiology background, right-handed people, the shoulder tends to be slightly depressed. So that's another thing as well. Useful talent.
Yeah. So, I can pretty much tell. And what happens is, if they reach out towards me, right, the farther their limb is away from their body, the less control they have over it. So I just come, boom, touch my shoulder, boom, attach, right? I redirect it offline, boom, and then mushimi, stay a constant, I stay attached to it. Most people punch or whatever they do and they pull to their core. So I stiff arm them.
Like a sticky hand side?
Yep. And I stay in here like this. Now it's attached to their stomach, right? And I keep walking forward, right?
Yep.
In order for them to do anything to me, they have to back away to, right? They'll never, when it's just like this, try to extend this because they can't do anything, right? Now, let's say I trap it out, say hijijime or something like that, right? Elbow lock or whatever. I trap it out, and then I grab the back of their hand. If I stand up and just take this off, they're gonna pull it.
Right, natural instinct.
They will pull it into position. What I find is a lot of people do techniques, they try to manufacture things instead of allowing this person to do what they're going to do.
Yep.
Every technique is like that. They will put themselves in the positions you want them. My job is to secure it in such a way where they can't hurt me. So if it's online, I knock it offline, I trap it, boom. And then they pull it back, it'll enter into the detrimental realm on its own. And that takes away strength, gender, size, takes everything out of the equation.
Yeah, that's a big part of Jiu-Jitsu in particular, right?
Well, it's a part of every art, but people don't realize that.
Right.
And
we joke that they get to pick the technique.
Karate, all arts, all systems are a matter of majors and minors. So karate is a system, right? And it's made up of kabuto, which is ancient weapons.
Striking.
Well, yeah.
Yep.
Thrusting, punching, striking, and kicking.
Yep.
It's made up of Aikido-Jutsu technique. It's made up of tegumi, which is Okinawan wrestling / grappling. And it's made up of Judo concept.
Yes.
So 20 makes 100% karate, right? It majors in thrusting, punching, kicking, and striking, minors in everything else, and uses its minor to achieve its major. Judo is the same way. Judo has strikes in it, has this, has that, but it majors in tachiwaza or throwing techniques, and minors in everything else, and it uses its minor to achieve its major. Aikido-Jutsu has everything in it, but it concentrates on, Aikido-Jutsu concentrates on or focuses on, or its major is joint manipulation, pressure point application, and muscle and tendon disruption. And then it uses its minor, the strikes and all that stuff, to achieve its major.
Right.
All art, it's just a different way of looking at the same thing. That's all it is. People don't realize that, so people always talk about karate is just punching and kicking and blocking.
Right.
And and it's only a stand-up art. And I say, if we apply the rules of writing the way most people apply their karate curriculum, every time you want to write something, you'd sit at a desk. But since you learned sitting at a desk, you've probably written since then, kneeling, laying down, this, that, and other. So karate is taught to you standing up for the most part in most schools, but
there's a lot of crossover and everything else.
yeah, you could do anything. So it's just, I look at all that and I listen to people and I watch people and watching YouTube and seeing this and that. I shake my head and I send a lot of messages. I just sent one to John Danaher.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I had to. He had said something crazy about self-defense, and because he was asked what martial art is best for self-defense.
That is of like the three major systemic questions. That's
Yeah. And people just, I sent a long message out after this.
Sure.
But in training, what is your personal goal and what are you endeavoring to impart to your students?
Slight disparate on that one. Personal goal at this point, please, is a little bit of longevity. Joints don't work the way they used to. Can't do everything they used to. My Wolverine healing powers have started to fade, right? The hand sometimes doesn't love, you know. So to a certain extent, longevity and other people's lenses, right? So if I'm, for my students, if I'm going to help make them better, which is the only real goal that matters, safer, stronger, etc. If that's the goal, how can I better understand their perspective? Big, tall, strong guy, right? The joke is that solves almost all your self-defense problems. But if you're not that, how do I help them, right? So firearms has nothing to do with anything I ever learned in Jiu Jitsu, but I realized after a while, like, okay, we had techniques for taking it away, and now it's a paperweight in my hand because I don't know how to use the machine, so I need to go and put time and effort and energy into learning that. It's 2021, bad guys like to use sticks and knives a fair amount, so put more time and effort. We actually do a fair amount of that in our variation of Jiu Jitsu, but how do I put more energy and effort into that? And then the stuff that doesn't come out on the mat, like, there's nothing sexy about verbal de-escalation drills. No student shows up on that night being like, oh, we're gonna do talk down exercises. And I'm always like, so I have to like hide them and sneak them in there because no one wants to drill that crap. It's not fun. It's like uncomfortable. I have to tell people and set up verbal boundaries, do a little bit of de-escalation. I never get to touch another human being and throw them across the room. And it's maybe the most important thing that doesn't get worked on enough, right? If I don't work those verbal de-escalations. So it becomes a combination of how do I sneak in the important stuff along with the fun stuff? Because the Randori is the fun stuff, and the rolling's the fun stuff, and the drilling's the fun stuff, and the hit the pads is the fun stuff. How do I make sure the important stuff is getting in there enough? How do I make sure the cerebral stuff's getting in there enough? We do a thing called violence dynamics, like what's your victim profile? Who are your potential threats? How will they potentially approach you? Again, it's kind of fun, but you really got to want to be the person who pops into that because most people don't. It's icky.
Why don't you work it into your regular curriculum in the respect of the way my curriculum is set up. My first line of defense is a safe distance. First line of defense. And in that process, I teach my students, and I've done this my entire, once I got old enough to really understand and apply
wisdom through age,
and working in the fields that I've worked in, I set ground rules. Like, I keep a safe distance, and if you see my mat, I have my symbol on my mat, right? And we stand on the symbol, and it's pretty big. So the circle pretty much gives me a safe distance to work from. So the person's over there where your desk is, and I tell them, listen, that's close enough. What do we need? What do we need to talk about? What's up? If they take a step, I say, well, that's close enough, please. We start off everything like that. That's close enough. And if they continue, and I ask my students, well, what does that tell you? Well, they're a predator. Exactly. Because I said, please don't come any closer. I'm gonna take it as a sign of aggression. Please, come on, man. What are we doing? They take another step.
Becker's discounting no, right? One of the most common things that a predator will do. Oh, listen, you're crazy. You know, some form of gaslighting. No. Listen, as I take a step forward, I get to raise my level of threat. I get to raise my level of force, right?
Exactly. So it's worked in every class. Instead of just having a certain section where we do de-escalation, it's set. If the person stops right there and walks away, we're good. Or stops right there and talks to me from there, we're good. But if they keep stepping, whatever I do to them, I'm justified at this point. And then we go into, now my next phase is I kick my way into a punch my way into a grab my way into a throw my way into a finish. That's my default path. And then defaults are designed to be altered, so I can alter and instead of kicking my way into a punch, I can burst into a grab and joint lock or whatever. You go down different paths and rabbit holes. But that's how it's worked in everyday stuff.
That's cool.
You know.
Yeah.
Do you think people value skills, physical skills, more so over information and or understanding?
I think newbies do. I think that's blame the American education module. We want to learn by rote, and by we I mean adults, because that's what we're taught by kids, as kids, right? If you do play, Randori, grappling, whatever, rolling, whatever word you want to call it, sparring. I have a problem with the word sparring, but either way, you will find things faster than if you are just taught them one by one, right? You'll get to adapt, and adaptation is always the key. But that's, like, I always talk about like personal permission. So many students be like, well, I need you to tell me what to do. And I'm like, you know how to move. You know, I was at a firearms class up at the 6 Hour Academy, and the guy wanted to know, by the way, this was an active shooter class. This was not for newbies. This was an active shooter class. The guy wants to know, do I punch out the gun and the same side foot at the same time, or do I go the other side? And the instructor goes, I saw you walk from your car to come over here. So you know how to walk. Cool. Do that. Don't think about it. Your feet know how to move, right? Focus on the target, focus on the threat, the walls around you, everything else. Your feet know how to move. Permission, right? A lot of times, one of the biggest things is newer students will not give themselves personal permission to play and to learn and to have fun and to screw up. So they value skills, whereas people who become a little more seasoned, they start understanding like the principles behind them, what makes it work, the concepts, content, whatever word you want to use. And I think that becomes one of the separations between somebody who's new or dabbling and somebody who's really trying to like understand the meta level, what's going on beyond, just the straight up, this is how I throw a punch.
People have to be taught how to learn. That's the issue.
They were taught wrong.
Well,
We were all taught wrong.
Yeah, most
right?
definitely. Most
1,
definitely.
2, 3, count to 100. Great.
But when us understanding the American school systems and this and that, we as instructors or people who run academies and things like that need to have that in the back of our mind. And when my mission is to teach students how to learn,
Yes.
how to train.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? And you're right. Most people, once they enter in the environment, they're looking for.
To be told.
It's mechanical. Everything becomes mechanicalized
Yes.
instead of
Absolutely.
natural
Yep.
and expressing what they already do and know naturally with the newfound information that they're getting, and so it becomes that. So now nobody can walk. Now it becomes a door opening as they're pivoting back and forth. And
I learned more Italian in being in Italy for 3 weeks with my father than I did of 2 years of college level classes of Italian. 3 weeks of being in country, I picked up and I was playing with and I was responding with more Italian than 2 years of textbook conjugating verbs and memorizing articles and all that kind of stuff. But I had to feel okay with the play and screwing up and being the ugly American and making fun of myself and mess up, right? People are really afraid of messing up. It doesn't feel good. It feels bad. It feels bad to mess up. You gotta, one of our contextual changes here that we try for is like, oh, if you messed up, congratulations, you learned how not to do it. High freaking five with the youngsters that we work with. That's a huge thing that we work with. That's a huge goal we play with is be okay messing up. Congratulations, you figured out a faster way not to do it.
Yep.
That's huge. Not easy.
Do you believe there to be a difference between training contexts?
I think we've hit that.
Yes, we definitely.
Yeah, I think we've hit that over and over.
Yeah.
Absolutely, right? You were saying the martial art and then things that are martial art. I do it a little bit differently. I say there's martial art, and then there's martial art. And so, I'm gonna pick on some people here. Sorry, my Olympic Taekwondo friends. Martial art, right? I'm gonna gently pick on some other friends. Because one of my best friends, she teaches Krav Maga, so I'm like, martial art, right? And that's like straight up This is how we're going to treat 21-year-old males at a blah, blah, blah for 8 weeks and then get them into the world. So Krav Maga was designed to be, right? Where are you in that spectrum? And then who are you in that context? If you are training a martial art designed, for young, strong men to beat the enemy, and you are a 15-year-old female, you might have a struggle with some of the stuff that they're teaching because they're teaching it for strength. I wrestle. There's a lot of strength moves in wrestling. It works because you're stronger than your opponent or you're faster than your opponent. You are a superior athlete. That's a hard thing to translate to self-defense. So if your context is not there, and by the way, nothing bad about any of this. That's one thing I always tell people, like, I have no problem with anything you want to do. If your hobby is cooking, congratulations. If your hobby, I want to experience it, please. If your hobby is woodworking, fantastic. I have none of those skills. I'm always amazed at it. If your hobby is, Tai Chi or Taekwondo and it's sport, congratulations. That's awesome. Just I don't call cooking skills self-defense skills. That's my only thing. Is I nut up a little bit on. I drive by Joe Max, Marshall, whatever. And it's like, okay, this is clearly a sport, sparring, whatever, and self-defense in big giant words. And I get the average person has no clue. Most of our parents call this karate, right?
And that's the sad part.
It is what it is. It's
well, and just the misleading that's going on.
When you were young, everything was kung fu. When I was young, everything was Karate Kid. Now it's ninjas because of those damn turtles, right?
Yep.
And the name in the general public changes. And then MMA, right? Do you do MMA? I'm like, what does that mean? But yeah, I do because we put together Kali and Jiu Jitsu and some Judo complex, some Thai kickboxing, right? So that's a mixed martial art. It's not what you're talking about.
Yeah.
That's its own thing, right? So yeah, context absolutely.
I was at Open Sparring Group, and I was fighting. And when I finished, I pretty much manhandled this person and started asking me, how is it I do what I do? How do I do this? All these questions. And then the subject came, we started talking about self-protection as opposed to self-defense and all this other stuff. So they're like, well, I don't train for self-defense. I said, okay, so what do you train for? Well, I stay in shape and this and that. I said, oh, but let me ask you this. Do you run self-defense workshops at your dojo? Yeah. Okay. So
What do you teach?
do you throw out the disclaimer that you don't train for self-defense purposes when you set up these self-defense workshops? No, I see what you did there.
Yeah.
So so you don't tell these people that you don't train for self-defense. So you show them a bunch of stuff that really doesn't apply because you don't train for self-defense.
Right.
But you collect their money and, I see what you're doing. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's the misleading that's going on. And I discuss that constantly within my writings, within my vlogs and all this other stuff. I talk about how it's very important that you understand a lot of things that are presented really don't translate.
A lot of years ago, I lived down the street from the Aikido in Cambridge. And we, at that moment in time, in our belt list, Rumi Nage and Shihu Nage was heavy on my list. And I was like, I gotta get better at this stuff. I'm gonna train more. It was around the corner. I went up to watch, and I had some problematic issues. I realized now I have major problematic issues with their methodology of teaching. A lot of pomp and circumstance. I don't like that very much. But get on the mat, go sweat, have fun, be a student. I know more than you. That doesn't mean I'm better than you, right? I don't sit there and whatever. But anyway, my own soapbox. At the end, one of the things my instructor will occasionally do was, okay, here's a concept. Let's do the concept, and now let's take it into this attack or this assault or this whatever, and here's where it fits into that panoply of work, right? So I'm watching them do this thing, and one of the female black belts came over afterwards, and she was like, "Are you interested?" And I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "Can I ask you a question? Because I've done some training." And it was like, "I saw this. Obviously, this is a concept." And she goes, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Well, how does that work into like a self-defense work?" And she goes, "Oh, no. We are not here for self-defense. We are here for the art. I said, oh, I really appreciate that. It's not really for me. I thank you, and I didn't go back. I don't have any problem with that at all.
Mm-hmm.
They're acknowledging what they're. I was similar thing in a judo school in Tokado in Cambridge. It's very similar. They're like, we do sport aspect judo here. There's no. Okay, cool. My instructor has a brother in New York who has a school down there, and he brought in I forget his name, a judo instructor who was a former Olympian, and we were all there. We're all training and on side again, and he's like, okay, make sure you do this at the end where you can separate the shoulder. And then he started to go forward, and we all went. And he looked around, and he immediately go, oh, I forgot it's a jiu-jitsu school. You guys want to know how to separate the shoulder? I'm like, yeah, please. And he goes, all right, yeah, let's do it. Because I totally forgot it was a jiu-jitsu school. Sorry.
Yeah. And
context, right?
And I have no problems as well, just like you, with what people do. If you call it what it is.
Correct.
If you try to pass it off as something else, there's where the issue comes in.
Yeah. Well, recently there was a video of an MMA fighter, some type of bar scrap. He didn't like the words the other guys used, and he knocked him into Tuesday. Did you see this?
No.
And it was like, oh, blah, self-defense. I'm like, that's assault.
Yeah.
That's not self-defense. That's assault. That is straight up assault. And you'll be like, well, look at this MMA guy defend himself. I'm like, no. Let's just not use those words.
Yeah.
Because that's not at all what that is. This is mutual combat and assault. And like, I recognize the average person doesn't know any better because they don't do this, and that's okay, and that's fine, and I'm not going to put that on them. If you're going to use the language and get in depth on Facebook, you maybe want to dig in a little bit, read a book or two. But if you're 20 years of training and you're still thinking that this is self-defense, and you're like, I'm doing traditional blah, 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 no.
Most people don't study past what they're showing, meaning,
Correct.
And they don't think past what they're showing. So, they go into school, their instructor says, do this, they do it, they leave, they put their gi up till next
a whole bunch of
class.
symptoms and wait till the next class.
They don't process, where people like you and me, this is what we do.
Yeah, it's under the skin.
I'm not even going to ask question 8, which is what context do you teach in training? The reason I'm here is
Well, sometimes it's just for fun,
understanding
training
the
is sweaty
context.
fun. It's more fun than a gym. I worked in a gym. This is more fun than a gym. It just is.
How does your training differ from the time you began as opposed to now?
My sensei's gonna watch this. It doesn't differ that much. It differs in language. We were all young college kids. We were training on basketball court, jiu-jitsu, and I don't mean like just grappling. I mean throwing, judo, aikido, jiu-jitsu, on a basketball court. There were a couple of folding mats. They were garbage. You just might as well not bother. So a lot of the methodology is I'm really focused on longevity for myself and my students. A lot of my students are 50 plus. They got to get up tomorrow morning and go into the office, right? And if they are broken, we're not playing chess. This is a physical activity, right? Actually, one student keeps getting hurt mountain biking. It's a physical activity. It's very easy to get hurt doing that. So anything physical has the potential to get hurt. This is definitely one of those things. The goal in jiu-jitsu is to learn how to hurt people. How do we do that as safely as we possibly can, understanding that we're still playing in that zone. So making sure I'm making people stronger, better, and minimizing the risk as much as possible. Whereas when I was 19 and had full Wolverine going, we were like, screw it, I'll heal tomorrow, I'll be fine, right? Now I'm like, Advil's a great drug. And that is definitely one thing that's changed a little bit. We never did any verbal de-escalation drills when I was younger. Running away was talked about, it was never practiced. We have runaway drills, like, blah, 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 boot, right? Oh, shit, he's got a knife, run away, right? You gotta put reps into that kind of stuff. And then a couple things where like lawyers looked at and they're like, some traditional stuff, and my instructors changed stuff as well, like, okay, knife disarm, and you butt stroke them with the bottom of the knife. Like, that's assault with a deadly weapon, especially in Massachusetts. You can't do that. But it's taught, and it's taught as part of self-defense.
Well, no.
At least in words.
See, if it's taught, that's the physical side of it.
Yeah.
But if you are satisfying that rule, then you're going to alter your physicalness to satisfy that rule, and that would be taken out, because you understand, if you controlled them enough and you got the weapon from them, you're not going to continue.
Yeah.
Understanding, I'm gonna show you my Venn diagram that I use when I teach self-protection, that I wrote years ago.
I'm sure Rory's going to think it's a good act of self-defense can turn into assault really fast.
Exactly, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Just going to put that final boot in and...
Yeah. From a fan's point of view, a fan of the martial sciences, whose martial acumen do you most admire?
Like one person?
It could be anybody. As many, the list or whatever.
People I like to train with. So on the gun fu side, there's a guy named Rob Pincus. He does like personal protection, self-defense, firearm based. Right? That's I like a lot of his stuff. There's a lot of other great things, like great guys out there with guns. I trained with Craig Douglas, the South Narc, like a lot of great stuff there. I mentioned Rafi in Rhode Island, the Kali stuff. Movie people, I'm like, that's movie stuff. Like, you know, Keanu Reeves trains for a while. He looks like John Wick. So that's, I don't really, you know, I heard a great interview once with, little guy, he was in the Expendables.
Jet Li?
Jet Li. And the interviewer said, so you must really know how to kick some ass. He goes, no, I don't do that kind of martial art. I do pretty martial art. I was like, okay, cool, I get it. It's like watching gymnasts, right? Rory, my friend Randy. I've never met Gene LaBelle. I wish I wanted to get in one of his seminars once. I always wanted to get into I'm blanking. Small circle, help me out. Wally J.
Wally J.
My instructor did a lot of training with Wally J. Never got to. He passed, right? So that's not coming back. I don't know if there's one name or one person. You know, it's. My dad's not from this country. My dad's from Italy, and my dad refers to America as America's job is to take the best, right? That's what America's supposed to be, is take the best. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. And I think of that as like what I try to emulate here, right? I'm not going to be a full-time Muay Thai fighter. How do I take the best that's useful, right? And leave the sports stuff aside. For other people, please enjoy it. It's just I'm just not going to do a ton of it. Same thing with knife work. I get a little, I kind of enjoy, Rory's got a quote. Do you know what Hubud is?
Yes. Oh, that's annoying.
Hubud is the fidget spinner of the martial art world. Rory
Yes.
Miller.
Yeah.
And our friends who do Kali are like, he's not wrong. I like it. It's fun. I recognize what it is,
Yeah.
but it's fun. I just recognize it as like, I joke that the autistic part of my brain likes the patterning. Like knife sharpening, I like the pattern, so I think that's why I like Hubud. I don't find it useful, I find it fun, and they're different.
So when the people who run the Mass Sheriff's Association, Defense and Tactics, the heads of that, and me in the position that I was in, and being the man, I had like the most experience martially within that whole organization.
And you're in the job.
And I'm on the job.
Yeah.
And these are more administrators who really don't do the thing.
Right.
But, so, another gentleman of mine.
But they make the decisions. Yeah.
Another gentleman that used to work with me, he retired before I did. He is a Filipino martial artist, as well as trained in Jeet Kune Do concepts and all this other stuff. He owns a school out in Southbridge,
Okay.
or somewhere out there. Anyway, he wrote a knife defense program for the Mass Sheriff's Association that got implemented and adopted into the program, and he put Hubud in it, right?
Okay.
So when he left, I took Hubud out of it, right? And anytime I said anything about anything, to give you insight, how unpopular of a guy I am within the Hamden County Sheriff's Department and stuff, because I'm not a yes man. They didn't like
That
that.
will make you unpopular.
They definitely didn't like that. You know how
Well,
Massachusetts is
job,
very
right?
political,
Yeah.
right? So anything I said, people would act like I didn't even speak. Been training my entire life. This is all I do. as opposed to people who went to a 2-week course and then came out, became instructors,
But
and,
Randy, the
and
book
things that
says we have to. Yeah.
right? So I would say something that act like I didn't even speak. And I'd say something simple about something or whatever. Well, we can't do that. We'll do that. I said, so you can't do this, but you allow somebody to put who but in the program.
Context, right? They don't know what they don't know.
I'm like, well, what's wrong with who but? I didn't say anything's wrong with it. But again, I just introduced something as simple as this, and you're giving me problems, but you allowed somebody to put who but in there. That's was my response all the time. So, yes,
Yep.
it's.
I'm with it.
What's more important to you? Time spent in training or one's ability to understand and satisfy the requirements of the respective curriculum? What I mean by that is this. If you got somebody in your dojo who picked up and pretty fast and could really implement the lessons real well, but time says that normal, say time, let's say like Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. There's people, they say that Brazilian Jiu Jitsu average 10 years to get a black belt. Right? But somebody was at black belt level in 4 years.
Sure.
Would you award the black belt or?
Yeah, and that's a good question. We have the way my instructor, I had a little bit of input, but not really, had set up the list. It's kind of, the list is actually based upon minimal amount of time. And then we expect everybody to take longer. And usually they do. Like we joke that if you never missed anything and you got everything the first try, maybe 5.5 years. But most people are closer to 7 to 8. And that's more normal for us. So I guess the answer is yes. Like the answer is both of them. If you manage, like, humble brag, one person has done it in less than 5 years. The list has been rewritten since then. I couldn't have done this, but I did it in less than 5 years. But I literally never missed a class. And I was there a half hour early, and I was there a half hour late, and I was there, so like, it was kind of an accident, and I actually went to my instructor, and I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't feel ready for black belt. And he goes, he called me out, really, really good sensei moment. He goes, oh, are you quitting the Monday after the black belt test? I said, I was so like a stab in the heart. I was like, oh my God, no. And he goes, so what are you worried about? You'll be here on Monday, and whatever you screw up, we'll fix it on Monday, and we'll fix it on Tuesday, we'll fix it on Thursday, right? And he goes, you're not leaving. Somebody was leaving, so that kind of pushed up the test a little bit. They were going to New York for law school, so it pushed it up a little bit. And he's like, you're not going anywhere. It'll catch up, right? What's the difference? Okay, fair point. Like I said, we're not hyper traditional. So,
in your opinion, what is the determining factor that elevates someone to that status everybody talks about, the high level status? What makes someone high level as opposed to?
I've got a definition for this. What's the definition of expert?
Good question.
I've got a really simple answer. Someone who knows more than you do. They're your expert. Have you ever made beef jerky?
No.
I know how to make beef jerky. I'm an expert to you. There's definitely people out there who've made thousands of pounds more beef jerky than I have. I've only made hundreds of pounds or whatever the number is. So translation, you could come to me for advice on how to start. If you want to surpass me, you better go talk to somebody else.
That's a great way of looking at it.
Well, so what's definition of sensei, right?
One who has gone before.
Yes, but that also means there's somebody before me. And it's a similar road we all travel. It's not the same road, but it's a similar road we all travel. That doesn't make me special. It means I've done this a little bit more than you have. Catch up. Let's go. Come play. Right? Get better than and please get better than me than this and find other stuff. So I always, people are like, well, you're an expert. I'm like, I hate that word. And I just had to kind of get okay with the idea that, like, okay, I do know more about this thing than you do. because every time somebody called me an expert, my brain immediately was like what's the term? The imposter syndrome kicked in immediately, smashed me over the head like a trunk monkey, and was like, no, look at these 3 people that you know personally that are way better than you are, so you shut up, you're not an expert. And I was like, but I do know more than that person, so to them I'm an expert.
Yeah. Well, that's a good way of looking at it.
It's the way to assuage my own ego.
No, it's good. It's good because the thing that if we had a Steven Seagal within the MMA community.
Which version?
Yeah,
Young
exactly.
version of Seagal where he's actually badass, or?
Well, what I'm saying is, they clown Steven Seagal so much, but, and I tell people all the time, listen, Steven Seagal is good at what he does.
He knows how to hurt people.
He's very good at what he does, but they always talk about, well, John Jones is high level. Steven Seagal is just some sensei dude. You see what I'm saying? So that whole, it's...
Again, contextual, right? I'm very lucky. I have friends that do cool things. So one of my friends is a head executive chef. This is like a Gordon Ramsay level, blah, 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 right? I go to him for advice. And he yells at me and tells me I'm stupid because he's my version of Gordon Ramsay. He's like, you screwed all this up. I'm like, okay, well, cool, listen to him, right? He's different than my grandmother. When she was alive, she was an expert in, and she was definitely better than him at these Italian pasta dishes. Different levels, different expertise, despite being in the same field, right? That's why I said, I will never try to discount somebody's experience being whatever the job is. Are you the same as the guy on the road? No, right? The corrections and the guy on the road.
2 different,
Everybody's going to think they're the same thing, but the actual application is vastly different.
Vastly.
But you only know it with expert eyes.
Yep.
Right? So, again, it's largely just my explanation to make sure my ego doesn't pop me too hard.
Out of all the interviews or conversations I've had with people, that question, this is the best answer I've ever received.
All I'm hearing right now is that I sucked at the rest of the questions. So that's what he said, ego.
No. Not by any means, but this right here, that was a great answer.
Thank you. I don't take compliments well. I'll just shut up now.
What is it that separates your school from the others?
Me?
Another good answer.
I mean, there's a lot of ways to answer that, right? We're physically in here right now, so I take great pride in a clean, comfortable environment. Rory gives a lot of sideways compliments, like really weird left-handed compliments. And he goes, your school confused me when I first came. I said, why? He goes, I worked with your students and then within a half a day I realized they could fight, right? They knew how to handle themselves, they could cheat, they could blah, blah, blah. He goes, but your school lacked the smell I associate with people who can know how to fight.
That dungeon.
The dungeon dojo. And I laughed and I said, Rory, you have no idea how hard we work. Because mom sitting on the side is not interested in that smell. And we work really hard to make little kids into great adults, right? We work really hard to make great adults into better adults, whatever that context means. And at the end of the day, I want an environment where if there's a teenager here and the mom's on the side, the mom's like, oh, I'm going outside, this is disgusting. Now in the middle of class, it gets funky. We can't avoid that. But that doesn't mean you can't clean too. So I will argue we have one of the cleaner schools around. We have a large school, right? So that's something that's kind of different. I never learned how to do things small. So I started a 7,000 square foot school with no students and just work 100 hours a week and it kind of worked out. And I've met a lot of other instructors and I think I do things a little bit different than they do. Not better, different, right? Difference of thing. I can't tell you I'm a better grappler than the BJJ guys down the street. I'm probably not. Probably better at punching than he is, right? Because we do that as well. There's a boxing school. I'm definitely not better punchers than them, but I'm better at grappling than they are. And I think that's just one of the differentials. So, and then the last thing would be like, I'm huge on, especially for our adults, and I'll tell you why in a second, is the community. adults are very isolated in 2021, right? In any year, in the last 10 years, social media's made it way worse. Very isolated. And a lot of our adults are parents with jobs. So they go to the job, they go home to the kids, which is fantastic, but they need their own thing 2 hours a week. This is for me. And if there's a community around that, so one of the things we do this for almost as long as we've been here, my instructor kind of started this. On belt testing nights for adults, we go and get pizza. I buy the pizza, right? Just because I want to be that guy. I just want to. I'm Italian. It's a rule. Italians must provide food. It's in the bylaws. That's on the green part of the flag. It must provide food. So I get pizza, and anybody that's now it's one of the local bar type establishments. Anyone that's old enough, like, come have pizza. I'm not buying alcohol. You're welcome to. I'm gonna have my own alcohol. But come have pizza. Come have wings. Come have nachos and chat and have the community element, right? One of the big things we talk about at Chiron all the time is this should be life enhancing, right? It is statistically stupid to train self-defense because you're gonna get more broken doing it, you're gonna pay more money doing it, and you're very unlikely to actually get attacked in America at this point in time without buying in. You kind of had to buy into a lot of troubles, right? Go to the wrong area, talk to the wrong people, whatever. So this better be a life enhancement. It better be fun. There better be a community element. There better be something along that line. It doesn't mean you can't train hard. It doesn't mean you can't do real things, but it should be enhancing as well.
Indeed.
So I don't know the other people in my immediate area very well. I hear too much, but I don't know if they do that or not. I know that we do.
This is the part of the interview where I ask the question which incorporates the title, Martial Insight and Advice video series. What insight and or advice would you give to someone wanting to begin his or her martial education and or competition career?
I'm not going to be the guy for the competition career. So my advice is going to be go to somebody else, right? And we do that. We get people here like, well, I want to rumble, like, I want to compete and grab. Like, there's a great school here, there's a great school there. Go check them out. And they're like, you don't want to do it? I'm like, I don't know how to do it. I don't know the rules. But my friend who's the judo guy, I'm like, what are the rules again? Can they do this or not do this? Because I joke about it. I'm like, I don't know. The only rules of the law. But anyway, if you ask my teenage students, my 4 favorite words: shut up and drill. It solves almost every problem. It really, like, you had a stressful day at work or at school, shut up and drill. You are screwing this technique up, shut up and drill. You are overtired, you're hungover. I've never trained hungover, Randy. I would never do that. Right. Boston College on Sunday mornings was the advanced class. Yeah. The room smelled like Captain Morgan. It's just the room stank. Like bad beer and Captain Morgan. But we were there sweating a lot, all over each other. Shut up and drill fixes most problems. Keep your eyes open. Make sure this is for you, right? Make sure it's not for your instructor. Again, we can get into the whole weeds about, like, there's a lot of schools that are there for the instructor's purpose. The instructor's supposed to be there for the students, and just make sure it is one of those. I think there's more of the right one than the wrong one out there. I hope, at least in my experience. That doesn't mean the wrong ones aren't out there. And make sure you're enjoying it. You know what I mean? If you shut up and drill and you're enjoying it, then you're probably doing the right thing.
Absolutely. I want to thank you very much.
This is fun.
Inviting us into your home and doing this interview. If there's anything you'd like to know, put it in the comments, and I'm sure Paul will get to it.
Yep.
I'll reach out to him as well if I see it before he does, and tell them where they can reach you.
Locally, Metrowest Academy of Jiu Jitsu, website, Facebook, Instagram, all the things and stuff I don't even know what to do with. If you're more on the self-defense side of things, the Chiron training group, it'll say Rory Miller's Chiron training because he's the name. Our friend Malcolm calls it the rock star, which Rory loves, hates with a passion. Rory's the least happy, famous guy I've ever met. He just really is. He hates being famous in any way, shape, or form. So of course we bust his chops. We're gonna get Rory handler team, like t-shirts or something like that made, just piss him off. But any of those things, I'm on Facebook, Paul DiRienzo. You know, let me know questions. Any way I can help. That's what we're here for.
And please comment, like, share, subscribe. We're trying to get to 1,000. Help us do that. I'll see you on the other side. Thank you.
Thank you guys. Very cool.